The path to pro seems rather simple. You grind lower tier competitions to improve your skills before either finding a team that makes a mark or get scouted by a bigger name. And often following said path drives the world's attention to you, or at least that's the perception of the wider Counter-Strike audience. In reality, Tier 2 CS consists of a diverse set of players and rich enough history that often the path up the scene can take different trajectories and tell different stories. Stories that are often more interesting to explore. Recent examples like Saw are more known for their veterans of 1.6 who have worked towards the consistent force that they are in the Tier 2 and earned their top flight opportunities even if only for a small period of time. Gaming Gladiators feature a roster of Danish players who only recently broke out at the Copenhagen Major, one of which, Nodios, has been grinding for over 7 years, and one such story is unfolding as we speak. A Swedish squad who are expected to be another team in the pantheon of unsuccessful Tier 2 hopefuls doing nothing in their one global opportunity ended up highlighting a future generation of talent. Whilst the individual stars were talked up at the time, it's a less flashy element that gets to break through first. The captain that led them along the right path has received a calling, an IGL whose story consists of tests, setbacks and enormous pressure from even a young age. One that's proved himself once before and is getting to prove himself once again. ZTR is a player who has been around a surprisingly long time. Despite being so young, his earliest references go as far back as 2017, at the tender age of just 13. Unlike the breakout youngsters of today, bursting onto the scene with immediate success wasn't as plausible back then. In fact, in ZTR's case, it shouldn't have been possible at all. He was unfortunate enough to suffer a VAC ban in 2015, long before any involvement in any relevant level of competition. A death sentence for any pro, the ban at the time meant that he was unable to compete at Valve majors or minors. Typically, a player like ZTR wouldn't get treated with any amount of respect, nor get anywhere near legitimate tournaments. However, the Swedish scene genuinely believed in him. Players around that time cited the ban as a moot point in the eyes of many, and celebrated in 2021 when Valve changed the rules on major eligibility. And in the meantime, ZTR was welcomed into domestic leagues and ladders. He would place high in the Swedish Pro League Faceit Hub over 2018 and 19, and earn his first tournament opportunities in mixes and August projects. It was in 2020, however, where he began to pick up steam and found his role with two teams that would define his future. Primer and KPI were never going to rock the Tier 2 world in the online era. However, the testimonies of this time period tell a story of long-term development. Despite playing under a veteran IGL Addy, ZTR had a presence about him that gave him IGL authority in the eyes of his teammates. When roster shifts came about, the team felt a natural shift to captain was in order for ZTR, despite his inexperience and youth. Later that year, he would revert back to a role player in KPI, his first international team. A baby step in the grand scale of things, going from domestic-only competition to ESCA Advanced and Recorded Open qualifiers, but the importance was less in the level and more in the team, specifically the IGL he played under. Aaron was well respected in Tier 2 despite coming from an underdeveloped scene in Hungary. He was the leader of players like Exertion, Kakanito and Kyojin long before they had a pro career. It's not unreasonable to suggest that under Aaron's wing, ZTR built up his skills as an IGL. In fact, I believe history suggests that that is the case. KPI might not be the breakout team for ZTR, but it would be his final permanent team in a role that wasn't IGL, and his connection to the Swedish scene paid off in his appointment as captain for Ninjas in Pyjamas. NIP were making preparations for the upcoming WePlay Academy League, and their team would echo the organisation's roots in Sweden. ZTR stood out as the first signing of the new Academy team, and the only player coming from an international project. With teammates Nyla, Manin, Fuzi and Sapek being discovered in domestic squads, the first iteration of Young Ninjas would take shape in January 2021. On its own, the project was confusing. As the Academy League wouldn't be launched until August that year, this left 8 months of practice, preparation and competition. All that would come eventually, but early on, NIP may have had misguided plans on how to handle the Academy team. At the time, they were very keen to talk up the NIP system, with a rotating door of Academy players to fill the fifth man on the main roster. This system attracted much criticism from pundits and fans alike, citing lack of stability within the main team and the Academy players being so new and not ready for Tier 1. But the org stuck to its guns, and ZTR was the first to be called into the main team just over a month after his signing. Unfortunately for him, the critics were proven right. Going from an ESEA advanced level to competing at IEM Katowice in just 3 months was always going to be a bridge too far. Plus, reportedly, NIP didn't really make much room to allow ZTR to thrive. Being a young IGL, you'd think that the more experienced players of the team would provide the support and space necessary to enable him. However, it was expected that ZTR was to simply play the same role and positions as Twist, who he replaced, and the mismatch meant that ZTR had to make futile sacrifices to make things work. The revolving door policy also meant that his time was always limited, and that time would run out in June when he was swapped back to Young Ninjas. This came just in time for the inaugural season of the Academy League, however, and with the captain back in full control, things would look positive once again. Young Ninjas would prove themselves as a capable Academy team, finishing in the grand final, second only to Malzanic's team. And unlike many of the Academy teams at the time, Young Ninjas made a point of improvement by officials. Over the next year and a half, Young Ninjas would continue to develop and improve the team through continued entries in online cups and further changing lineups. Among this, ZTR became the only consistent on the roster, and it's quite arguable that he was the ultimate beneficiary of Young Ninjas. The time spent in this development squad enabled ZTR to lead his team to the final We Play Academy League title, the perfect achievement to bring his time in NIP full circle. After this, it was a point perhaps that he was ready for a new challenge, and NIP certainly agreed. In 2023, ZTR agreed to a contract extension, keeping him part of the org, but loaning him out to Godsent. Off the back of their Brazilian roster's collapse, Godsent returned to their original roots as a Swedish-based team, with ZTR once again being the man the squad was built around. Whilst his time on Young Ninjas can be fondly looked back on, Godsent was quite the opposite. The team middled around the Tier 2 Cups, achieving nothing of note and placing similarly to Young Ninjas in shared competition. They would try to find the necessary pieces, including a rebuild partway through the year, but nothing seemed to click. Ironically, ZTR's best showing in this time was on a team not fully compromised of Godsent players. In failing to become a more stable presence in Tier 2, Godsent would slowly collapse from late 2023 to March 2024, with the first domino once again being ZTR. Not keen on returning him to the Young Ninjas roster, NIP agreed transfer terms with a very different and unorthodox name in the Tier 2 space. Metasport were historically a very low-level Norwegian organisation that decided to venture into the Swedish scene. Signing their new roster in September 2023, ZTR was acquired near year's end to take over the IGL role from Giacchino. He was back in familiar territory, and not just in nationality. Flanked by his former Young Ninjas squad mates Nilo and Adam B, he had a core of faith and support that screamed potential. However, looking broadly at Metasport's records in 2024, it would be easy to assume that their tournaments weren't very special. Metasport's claim to fame was in one particular run. Entering the Western European Masters, they would compete to qualify for the Blast Premier Showdown, where they were pretty much counted out from the word go. Featuring a mix of Tier 1 competing teams like Fnatic and Furia, plus top Tier 2 teams like 3D Max and Apex, we weren't short of potential competition winners, and Metasport certainly weren't on the list. It was down to a pair of unlikely victories against Furia that enabled the Swedes to make it out of Group B behind the likes of Apex. With the format being best of one groups, you could forgive Furia for having a bad day, and Metasport's perception of winning didn't change as a result. They were fortunate that the opposite group saw something not too dissimilar, with underdog Sprout topping out and facing Metasport in the semi-final. A winnable match by comparison to the rest of the playoffs, which Metasport would achieve with a little bit of difficulty. The grand final would set them on for a rematch against the only team that could beat them so far, Apex. Whilst this team were recovering from the many transfers that occurred in the wake of their incredible Paris Major run, Apex still had maintained a respectful position near the end of last year. 2 LAN finals in December, plus appearing in IEM Katowice to kick off 2024, plus a win over key threat 3D Max in the semi-finals, meant that they were significant favourites over Metasport. Yet this is where ZTR's leadership truly shone through. Whilst Apex's Nork came in with a hunger to take no prisoners, ZTR had a grand final game plan. Having adapted from their initial group stage meeting, the Swedes dismantled Apex on all bases, closely contesting the rematch Ancient and completely wiping the floor with them on Mirage and Inferno. In the most shocking of circumstances, Metasport took the Western European Masters and a spot at the Blast Showdown. And they wouldn't stop turning heads there. From the outset, Metasport were not talked up as a significant underdog, especially against their first opponent. Team Falcons had assembled a super team, including bringing in CSGO's GOAT Simple in his CS2 debut. Metasport would need to pull out all the stops to bring this project to its knees. Map 1 went expectedly the way of Falcons, but Overpass backfired massively as Metasport decimated the super team's map pick. To push it past the finish line was a struggle, with Falcons clutching time after time on Vertigo. However, at the 11th hour, Metasport took another shocking win to eliminate the Falcons. Their newfound confidence carried over against Monty, who were in roster upheaval. With captain SDY not renewing his contract and Danish Bro moving to a future with Astralis, Monty had questions and Metasport had answers. Decimation was the answer to Monty's fate, as the Swedes breezed past the Ukrainian org and were now one test away from a spot in the finals. The task itself, that would be too much. Team Spirit were the #1 team in the world coming into this event, having won IEM Katowice and earning their spot in the Copenhagen Major. Nobody would have been surprised if they smacked Metasport about. Yet the part-timers didn't back down, and ZTR called an adaptable Vertigo to take the initial start in the series, handing Spirit their only map loss in the showdown. However, from there, Spirit would show why they were the favourites. Returning on maps 2 and 3, the dream of Metasport was killed stone dead despite their valiant efforts. The dream of dreams couldn't be realised by Metasport, but I think reasonable minds wouldn't be too concerned in the grand scheme of things. And this team of part-timers fought tooth and nail from an open qualifier, were doubted every step of the way, and still came within one map of appearing in Wembley Arena. Much like 9 the year prior, Metasport had put their names on the map, and whilst not being as opportunity-filled as their Polish predecessors, they were enough to be considered a threat in Tier 2. In the end, they wouldn't live up to that threat, as the following tournaments wouldn't exactly be success-filled. Metasport wouldn't win any significant cups, and in the end blame would be laid at the feet of ZTR. Although a question remains as to who laid that blame. The announcement from the organisation was met with significant backlash on social media, not just from fans, but even Metasport's coach admitted that it might seem odd. We can only speculate on what happened behind the scenes. The fact remains that ZTR was benched and leadership was transferred to the old IGL Jacquino. A major setback to say the least, but smarter minds were watching. In lieu of trophies, captains are judged on what they did with the pieces they had available. In that respect, ZTR showed himself as a young IGL who took a relatively unremarkable team and nearly did the impossible with them. So the next question is, what happens when you give a guy like that a lot to work with? Well, that was a question asked by Gamer Legion. While ZTR spent time on the bench, Gamer Legion lost their own IGL. In general, the team had been lackluster since they lost Shuei to Maus, and Snax wasn't exactly the answer to bring them back. With their Paris Major roster going to greener pastures, Gamer Legion had spent 2024 in recovery mode, trying to upgrade and replace pieces as they saw fit. When the opportunity arose to move Snax onto G2, the decision was made to supplement their youthful roster with a youthful IGL. On July 5th, ZTR officially joined the new era of Gamer Legion. Now, no move is guaranteed success, and while ZTR has plenty of potential, right now that is the main quality. Having only led a Swedish team to success, the challenges of an international squad is a hurdle that ZTR will need to cross. However, if there's one place to refine a player to Tier 1 talent, it's Gamer Legion. Their coach Ash has been responsible for earning the org a reputation for finding and readying players for a future career. It's actually what happened to Shuei. The Pole has followed a similar path to ZTR, working through the academies and local divisions before becoming the Tier 1 IGL he is today through his efforts on Gamer Legion. With the parallels and circumstances similar, it's small wonder why this move has garnered attention. The question is, does ZTR have the same potential behind him? Nothing is promised in this sport, and if ZTR doesn't make it, then it was never going to happen. If he can, then I see no better place than Gamer Legion to prove himself once again.